Hi everyone.
Hi guys.
Today we are joined by a very special guest, and I'm not going to pontificate and give you any spiel at all, other than to introduce someone very special that we're here to talk about an interesting subject that Dan and I don't really know much at all about. So I'm going to hand over to our guest, and he can enlighten us a little bit.
Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me in, guys. I think we're talking about musks or animalics today. My name is Matthew, and I'm from Vancouver, self-taught perfumer, and I should put out the disclosure now. Everything I'm going to give you is a complete lie. I don't know anything. I'm self-taught. Buyer beware.
That's the best thing.
It feels quite fitting, really, that you're joining us for this video, because the first fragrance of yours that we encountered was Civet Cat Chypre.
That's right.
Which is people who watch our channel know we've got a big love of classic fragrances, Guerlain, and early 20th century fragrances. And when we smelled Civet Cat Chypre, it really kind of transported us back to that old world, with the richness and the sexiness and the bit of raunch which comes from using real civet. So we've got a whole bunch of things here to smell. How many have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 materials. So we've got
very special materials.
Yeah, just in these little. So Matt sent us these little vials. So lots of some natural animalics, as well as a few kind of synthetics. Should we just get stuck in? Should we start smelling?
Yeah. Your call. So
where do we begin?
I think if you think of something dirty, funky in perfume, or even cuddly, soft, you think musk. Musky would be the word you would describe, and musk is something which has been used for a long time. So let's start with some Siberian deer musk. So tell us.
We hear a lot about this, don't we? But we never.
But this is the real stuff. So it's not, when we see on a notes list on a modern perfume, especially a kind of European-produced IFRA fragrance, it's not natural Siberian. It's not natural deer musk. It's a synthetic. But this is the real thing.
This is the real thing, and so far as I understand, maybe Arish Ledor and some of the high-end Russian Adam perfumes, or some of the oud-based, very, very niche, very expensive perfumes, use some usually Mongolian or Siberian deer musks, and I do believe I received this from the same supplier. So yeah, the deer musk is probably in all the world the most prized musk, and the very, very most prized deer musk of all deer musks come from the Tonquin, tiny little Tonquin deer from Vietnam, which this is not, because the tiny little Tonquin deer, it's illegal to harvest any kind of musk from that particular endangered animal. I've heard it's a completely different level. It's a very heavenly odor, and probably why it's endangered now.
Yeah.
That is the Tonquin deer musk, kind of the holiest of holies. And then the second one would be the Himalayan deer musk, which this is also not, which is very rare. So the Himalayan and the Vietnamese deer musk, these are tens of thousands of dollars per gram, or something ridiculous like that, right? Ridiculous amount of money. The Siberian deer musk, the Mongolian deer musk, is actually supports poor folks, farmers, indigenous peoples, people that live in small communities way out in the middle of nowhere. They are given tickets by the government, by the various provinces and states around the backwaters of Russia. And they are given permission to do a call each spring. And these folks, they actually do collect and use every part of the animal. And there are registered sites where you can purchase this particular deer musk that we're smelling here, that you can purchase from. So that's
Wow.
kind of a little bit of the background of how
So,
we get
I mean,
this.
it's interesting to,
It's
to
great
hear,
stuff.
how much knowledge and thought there is, you have behind it. It's not just a material you've picked up and gone, hey, this smells great, I don't care where it came from. You've obviously put a lot of thought into it. But equally, it's clear that any company on a large scale, LVMH or anyone like that, it wouldn't be possible to use this material on a large scale ethically at all.
No.
So,
no,
what does
for a couple reasons.
Yeah.
First, cost. Yeah. Second, it would be hard to. When a large company makes perfumes, they're putting out hundreds of thousands, and they have to procure all of their materials before putting it out. That would be impossible because there's only a certain amount available each spring.
Yeah.
And it's also extremely expensive. So if you go onto websites like Russian Atoms, like a Riche Lador or something, they do limited sets, right?
Yeah.
They quickly run out. And there's a reason for that because the materials quickly run out. And it's the same with mine. I make everything here in my living room, everything by hand. And the other reason is larger companies have lots of lawyers. And instead of giving the explanation to the public, they would just much rather avoid any kind of possible controversy because it is an emotional topic,
So what does it smell like? It's
fantastic.
It's interesting wearing on car because I tried this on skin a bit, and compared to some of the other synthetic musks, I felt this creeps up more gradually on you. When you first put it on, I couldn't smell actually that much for a little while, and it took a while. And as I sat there for the day, there was this, this gentle, warm sweetness. This, it wasn't. It never. You do get some kind of dirtiness, but it feels more like as opposed to some of the other things we're going to smell. It doesn't smell downright dirty. It just smells a bit cuddly, as if you've got into, we've used this term before, as if you've got into someone's bed, like they've got out of bed and they haven't soiled the bed. They've just been, the feeling of their body in the bed.
It has a lovely warmth, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean,
definitely.
I'm a big fan.
I don't really, people often use the term pissiness when describing, I know there's a slight hint of it, but it just feels warm and cuddly and snuggly and.
So how do you go about putting this into a perfume? I mean, what's the?
Well, I do.
How do you judge the amount and all that sort of thing?
Well, I do exactly what we're doing right here. So I'll take out a couple. Let's say, like in the evening or in the morning, I'll take out a material like the deer musk, and I'll dip it in, and I'll smell it. And exactly as Daniel was saying, he was putting language to the scent. So you're expressing warmth or cuddliness, and I write this down. And I try to string out and pull out all of the facets, all of the language that I can use to describe this material. And I make a note of how long the deer musks last. And then I make a note of how strong it is. So I thoroughly familiarize myself. If I would say how I interpret this musk, I get a little bit of suede in there, a little bit of woodiness. I get a slight bit of bitter sweetness, almost like the backside of a leather belt. It's got that raw, bitter leather facet to it. It does have a fuzzy bit of a texture to it. And then I write down all of the facets to it, and I write down from my memory, because I've done this same process with hundreds and hundreds of materials. I go through my memory banks and I think to myself what materials would fit and sort of complement this particular material. So if I want to make, like, for example, my honey deer musk perfume, I want it to be the start of the show. There is a bit of bitter honey, balsamic, sweet, complex, dark, bitter balsamic note in this. And so I gather those materials, and then it's all a matter of judging how much to use as each one according to the strength. So yeah, Joe, is that kind of?
I guess a lot of trial and error in the beginning to gauge the amounts you need.
A lot of trial and error, and a lot of putting language to scent. No, well, yes, because as Daniel was saying, the funny thing with some musks is with this deer musk, it's 3% what I gave you. If we dilute it down to 0.5%, it's nearly as strong. If we dilute it down to 0.01%, it's still there. You can still smell it. So you get to know the material, and this is particularly, it's tenacious, it's not powerful, so it will be noticed through the middle and definitely through the end of the perfume. And it's one of these materials that's Daniel, you're exactly right. It grows over time.
And that's the thing. It's like, as with lots of great materials, like, you know, oud and sandalwood and things like that. It's not just one smell. You're getting quite you know, you're talking about leather, and you're getting lots of these different things. So even as a material, you're getting a kind of a progression which you would normally describe if you're talking about complete perfume.
Exactly,
it's a perfume in itself.
Yeah.
Should we move on? It
is.
We've got 10 more to get through. Yep. So how do we feel? How about Civet next?
Civet, yeah.
Yeah. So this is the, you know, your fragrance we encountered first, Civet Cat Chypre, and it's something that you know, Joe and I have. I guess we've kind of spoken about a bit. It was in a lot of those old Guerlain fragrances, especially. Jicky and Mouchoir de Monsieur, more so in Mouchoir de Monsieur, which is one, you know, I'm a big fan of. And can we also just talk about, you know, the ethical question again? I know we've already talked about it for Musk, but how is it possible to get? Is there such a thing as ethically sourced civet? Because this is real stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so civet, it looks like a ferret. I actually have a pet ferret. He's running around on the ground right now.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and they're farmed animals. So it depends on how well or how poorly the farmers in Ethiopia treat their animals. So where I get it from, I get my perfume, my civet, a lot of it from a man also named Dan. Canadian fellow, and he goes down to Ethiopia. I don't know if he went this year because of COVID, but he tries to get down there once or twice a year. And he works with the farmers, he knows the farmers, and he purchases, in traditional way, it's a horn of civet. It's like a water buffalo horn or something. It's, wow. Again, the animals aren't killed for the horn, but they just pack it full of civet musk, or maybe they don't use those traditional containers anymore, but he purchases large amounts from someone he trusts and someone he sees where they keep they call them civet cats, although they don't really look like cats. So far as I know, I am getting my civet musk from someone who treats their animals well. Mm-hmm. I should have said, first of all, civet's never, ever, ever killed for the musk, because once you kill the cat, it doesn't produce musk anymore. But what they do is the civet cat has a pouch, and you can stick your finger or a little spoon in there and draw out the fat from this pouch, and that is the musk. It's like a yellow, buttery, it looks like yellow butter. It looks like butter.
So is that what you? So this is a 10% tincture, isn't it?
Yeah, this one's 10%. Yeah.
this is pretty. So is it? And this is a tincture that you've done yourself?
Yeah.
So you started with the paste. So this,
I
as
start with the
opposed
paste.
as opposed to the musk, this
Here's,
is.
here's some of my tinctures. Here's one of them.
It does
Oh,
look
yeah.
like a jar of piss, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. But it smells a lot better in my opinion.
But
But I mean, it's
It
got
just
some
got a whiff
real
of alcohol,
edges.
but
yeah, it has, isn't it? I mean, opposed to the musk, which I was saying was it just crept up you on this warmth. The civet straight away. There's it smells animal, doesn't it? If it smells
Yeah.
it smells a bit like a kind of a hamster cage.
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Quite a
Like I
quite a
said, dirty bird
dangerous,
cages, but yeah, cage, animal cage.
Yeah, and
quite a
also
dangerous smell.
yeah, it doesn't feel as opposed to the musk, which felt cuddly and embracing. The civet feels a bit. I don't know if aggressive is the right word, but it feels like it's a bit more punch.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's far more off the top than the deer musk. The deer musk typically you can only kind of smell midway and towards the bottom of the perfume, depending
Yeah.
on how much you use. The interesting thing, and all of these musks have unique characters, is if you put civet a noticeable amount in, you're going to smell it from the very moment you spray all the way. It will be the very last thing that you smell on your skin. So
Yeah.
it's quite unique in that character. And just to answer Joe's question, how to use it, what a lot of perfumers do is they put in what they call a subconscious or I guess we could just say unnoticeable amount. So imagine we have a perfume here and we fill the perfume up with, let's say, 50% of the oil or materials. Then I put in the civet paste to a degree, or then I put in the civet tincture. To a degree, okay, yes, I can smell it. And then you fill up the other half with more perfume. So now you actually can't smell it in a registered manner, but it is there subconsciously. And perfume houses have done tests, and time after time, people always choose the one with even unnoticeable amounts of civet.
Yeah, well, I guess that's the thing. You don't. I mean, we quite like some quite funky perfumes, but you don't want to. Nobody wants to spray this. All of this on them on themselves.
No.
But it's amazing when and even with your fragrance, it doesn't smell. It doesn't smell like an animal cage. Like it doesn't. There's there's something there which you can't. You can't always identify immediately, and it's certainly the case with something like Jiki by Guerlain, which I know is obviously synthetic civet now, but it's a beautiful lavender fragrance. It doesn't smell out and out dirty, but there's just
As far as I
something
know,
underneath there.
Jiki actually uses real civet.
Oh wow!
As far as I know, Jiki actually uses real civet. I could be wrong, but I think they do. Civet is not illegal in any way in the European Union. You can import it, export it, and once in a while, when I can't get my hands on Dan's civet paste, I will buy it from large European companies like Firmenich, or I forget who was it that I bought it from. Maybe Givaudan or one of these larger companies. I don't want to. I apologize to them if they're not actually selling it. It's one of you guys. Okay.
Okay.
One of the big ones. Yeah.
Oh, and so I didn't realize that the big companies are selling real.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's so.
See, I mean, this clears up something. Sorry, Dan. After you.
No, after you.
Well, I was just gonna say this clears up something for me straight away, that not all animalics are created equal. I mean, there are some which are really a no-go for mainstream, and there are others which might not happen so much because of cost or sort of style and taste. But actually, it's not always a question of the animal cruelty issue and sort of obtaining it legally.
and you make
Civet's more mainstream than I thought.
Yeah. Well, it's very mainstream in the way that the majority of civet paste is actually used as hunting bait. I've tried it once. It's absolutely horrible. So if the animal is not treated well, the civet paste smells like rancid fat. And the highest quality civet paste is where the animal's treated best.
All right.
And that's another thing to give consideration to as well. So this stuff that I get from Canada Dan, it smells fantastic. It's got floral nuances to it. Even the commercial civet musk that I get is very different from the one that I get from Dan.
Yeah.
The commercial one is more like brittle, dry cheese, and yeah, they're all different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have often when I've seen people describe civet, and even when we smelt some with Sarah McCartney, and the civet she had was more cheesy than this, I think.
Yes. Yeah. So she likely has got it one of the commercial places. Yeah. Yeah.
I love
Right.
it. There's such a lot of attitude in it, isn't there?
Now a little bit of English history when it comes to civet. You guys know what dandies are.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so for the folks who don't know, about 100, 150 years ago, people started having a little bit more disposable income, working class people. And just like today, a lot of people were fashion geeks, and the young men dressed outrageously. Some young men did. And one of the favorite things that the dandies did is they would go out and buy their civet paste, and they would put it on their foreskin. And they swore by it. It was like
God.
the ladies absolutely loved it. So,
It's worth a shot. I mean...
don't let me stop anyone.
Just give me a moment. I'll be right back.
If you're Jewish or Muslim, and if you don't have any foreskin, go ahead and party on. Just put it right on there, no matter what. Go out and yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it? So Civet and the very, very first perfumer in London, I think around 1650, the shop's name was Ye Old Civet.
All right.
So Civet
That's amazing.
Been,
Yeah.
Yeah, Civet's been around before other base notes in Europe as used as a fixative.
Yeah.
So back hundreds of years ago, men would just basically go down to the drugstore and pick up lemon oil, lime oil, petitgrain, a bunch of different citrus waters, and they'd throw in some civet. And the civet would give a lastingness to these handkerchief perfumes. And so civet's been around us a very long time, and probably in the Middle East much longer.
Yeah.
Than Africa.
Wow.
Should we move on?
Yep.
So
What do we think
next, I think Ambergris. Would you say Ambergris or Ambergris?
Ambergris.
I
don't know. Potato.
Yeah, I mean, I heard because it's Ambergris, amber grey. I would say Ambergris, but people say both. So this is at 3%.
Yeah.
And is this kind of white grey?
This is the highest quality. This is like very, very light ambergris. This is they call it. This is white, like highest level. I'll show you what it looks like. So the very highest level of ambergris, it's got more of this color. Now, it's not very strong. If you buy the less aged, like the brown ambergris or gray or black ambergris, the tincture is going to be like a blood red color. And the very youngest ambergris smells like vanilla. The middle-aged gray ambergris, so the black one smells like vanilla. It gets lighter as it ages. The gray one smells like, a little bit like seaweed. And then the top one will have nuances of cinnamon and minerals. And that's what we're smelling right now.
Yeah.
So it's the lightest colored one.
I would happily wear that on its own, actually. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that I think as a smell on
Invigorating.
its own, it's not actually it's not a particularly intense smell on its own. Certainly, having just smelt the civet, but I've got a little grey ambergris tincture which I occasionally just put on, you know, with a floral, something like Après Landais, and it just seems to make it bloom a little bit more and gives it. It doesn't really. I don't feel that the fragrance smells any different. It just, I don't know. I feel it lasts a bit longer and radiates a bit more, and yeah, and
It
yeah,
has a
just,
real lift.
Exactly. Radiance and lift and transparency. It's like the MSG for perfumes. The key material here is ambroxan. Now, I should say to everyone, very often people will say, oh, I don't like this perfume. It has too much ambroxan. I've never met a single person, I've shown them ambroxan, that didn't like the smell of ambroxan. So if you don't like a perfume, I guarantee you it's probably not the ambroxan. So it's got this, anyways, light, woody, and for me, the better quality ambergris, they have this interesting duality to them. I can smell both the minerals and the salt and the sea.
yeah.
And I can smell very bone dry beechwood. So this material is simultaneously very aquatic, at the same time very, very desert bone dry. And that's kind of like the complexity that.
I mean, I found it actually. I find this quite bright in a way, quite sparkling.
Yeah.
You know, if you can imagine, you know, the sunshine kind of bouncing off the waves, that kind of like little bubbles of light and little bubbles of color, as opposed to a lot of the other animalic things where you think of it as being dark, brown, rich, golden. I don't feel that. I feel this is more like, yeah, sparks of light.
I'd always thought of ambergris as a real base. And actually, the more I smell this, I realize it does have a real brightness and a lift, and it feels like it would be a great top note in a perfume. I never really thought of ambergris in that sense. I'd always sort of felt it as a sort of a base that binds it together and gives it longevity. But this makes me reconsider for sure.
This is the magic of ambergris, the fact that it makes perfumes last a very long time, and at the same time, it's very makes things bright and diffusive. So I should probably define for you, like, what is a musk? If you think back to musks in terms of animal communication, a deer or whatever animal comes along, pisses on a rock, and it's a method of communication to the females, right? For example, or the females to the male, or whatever, the animals are communicating with each other using the musk. So it's very important that the musk is both tenacious, it lays and stays on that same rock after it rains, and that it sends a signal to the area, the range where the animal walks around. So natural musks are both tenacious, they'll last a very long time, and they're bright and diffusive and powerful. To one degree or another. So, and this is typically why they're very expensive also. In perfumery, generally materials that last longer are more expensive.
But then I guess, the ambergris is a bit different in that it is, you know, it's excreted, and you know, whereas some people might take more of an ethical issue with something like musk or civet, which has been obtained from a live animal. Ambergris is something which has been expelled by the animal, and then it's bobbed around in the sea, and then if you're lucky enough, it washes up on a beach, and then you won the lottery. Like,
exactly.
But when I smell this, you know, you were talking about smelling a material and thinking what you do with it. I just think flowers and brightness is what I want to add to this and make sparkle and radiant, and yeah. Great.
It is a very clean, bright, woody scent.
Yeah.
It's marine-like.
Yeah.
And very transparent. It's quite nice. Now, if you got the darker varieties of ambergris, the ones that look like blood in the container, like the brown or gray ambergris, it's going to be more animalic. It's going to smell more poopy. Absolutely.
Shall we, speaking of poopy, shall we move on?
Yes.
So, Hyraceum,
Okay.
Buckle up.
African
I
stone.
love it. This one's weird. This is a weird one.
So this is another one which, again, we're not so worried about being. We don't obtain it directly from the animal because it is from an animal pissing on a rock.
Yep.
So no animals will be harmed in this. Yeah, it's got. Yeah, It is arid and dry, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's got this mineral. It's got this mineral, and it smells so dusty.
Yeah.
It smells like it smells like a million years old.
Yeah.
That smells like a really good single malt to me.
Really?
Yeah, I got a real smoky and peaty whiskey
Peaty,
there.
yes.
Yeah, peaty, yeah.
Very peaty.
Very dry smoke.
So here's, if you can see it,
Oh, I like that.
that is the crushed stone. This is a Hyraceum. Now I can shake it up for you. So basically, I buy the stones. The Hyraceum is a tiny little, Hyrax is a tiny little animal. It pisses in a cave generation after generation after generation, again, in Ethiopia. And the pea crystallizes. No animal is ever harmed. It becomes like stone, and then guys go in there and they chip off pieces and sell it to perfumers. Then I crush it up into a sand. I throw alcohol in there, and that's it right there.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And it smells like mineral leather.
So good.
Yeah.
Suede.
Definitely tan
What do
leather.
you get from it?
So last year for New Year I went to Morocco, and I went to Fez, and in Fez they've got a couple of tanneries, one in particular, open air tanneries, absolutely vast, and so they sell leather everywhere, but there's just this smell of leather, freshly tanned leather which has been out in the sun. But to treat it after they've stripped off as much as they can, they basically use pigeon shit. So there are these vats of pigeon shit with leather soaking in that to strip everything off. Then they put it out in the sun to kind of dry. And I know it doesn't sound like a very nice smell, but it is. It's an kind of enchanting smell, and I get a bit of this, a bit of that here. You know, that kind of tanned leather with poopiness.
Yeah.
It's not as poopy as the Civet. I don't think. I think the Civet was.
No, this is a drier, aged cheese and peat. I think you're right on, Joe. I think the peat I smell, like almost if you put your nose against a stone, would smell like that with peat and moss. If I want to make a perfume smell millions of years old, this is what I go to. It's very different.
Kind of ancient Egypt pyramids and arid deserts and.
Yeah, it's a sort of a smell that gives a real sense of temperature as well.
Yeah,
it really
arid.
does feel hot and dry and arid. Yeah.
Dan, I think you're exactly right. I could just imagine we're going through like Indiana Jones, and you roll back this rock, and it was the first time this tomb, dead bones, right? It's been closed for thousands of years, and then you walk in, and it's like this old air. This is what the room would smell like.
Yeah.
Right? Like stale air, and it's very complex.
It is complex, and it's in a way it's. I was going to say unusual, but there's something strangely familiar, almost kind of comfortingly familiar about it. Animalics. Yeah.
So where would this feature in a perfume, for instance? Would this would this be the feature of a perfume? Would this be a supporting note to you? I mean, I guess you haven't made it yet, have you? It's whatever inspires you.
Yes, exactly right. I think this would be a good perfume if I wanted to make a perfume about a place. Maybe, you know, I grew up on a farm. If I wanted to do the inside of an old dusty barn room. At the same time, I could use it as a feature because most of the people that I sort of sell to, they're looking for something different. So I don't mind featuring this as the main material. I think it would work wonderfully with leather, suede materials, definitely with oud. Works great with other animal musks.
It's really good.
Even cheese notes, like almost like a blue cheese would be good, or like you're saying, like a peaty liqueur would be great as well. So you guys have given me lots of ideas.
Yeah. Watch out for it. Right, should we let's move on. But should we try beeswax next?
Yeah, let me find my beeswax.
Yeah.
Now, I'm scared of bees, but that's fine.
Bees are great. Bees are awesome.
They are.
I love bees.
Unless they sting you in the ear.
I tell you what, this is
Which hurts.
this is such a different world to everything we've smelt. It feels quite uplifting, doesn't it? After everything, flowers and honey and a bright spring day and
Well, we need some of those in our lives at the moment, don't we?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So again,
I'll tell you the reason.
Oh, that's lovely.
Go on.
Can you smell the musky part of it though?
Yeah. Well, I can't yet on the card, but when I did on my skin, there was a fuzz and a warmth. After a while, because that initial kind of sweet floral quality at the beginning started to fade, and it became a bit fuzzier and a little bit. I guess I think it had more. The things we've talked about so far had more in common with the deer musk, for me.
They both share a honey note. I do believe so. Yeah.
I'm getting quite a medicinal curry thing.
Yes.
It's really good.
Very.
And slightly apricot-y as well.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. So were any of you guys naughty little kids? Sometimes here in Canada, at least over here, when we're kids, we take little ants and kind of squish them between our fingers. And I don't know if you've ever squished red ants between your fingers and you'd smell your fingers. And there is a kind of musky insect musk. Now, of course, you have the stink bug, which is extremely musky and stinky. But you'll notice that some insects do have a musk to them. So, as you're saying, it's kind of like this curry, warm, bittersweet curry.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's the musky part, and that is actually the phenylacetic acid, which is which we will smell in its isolated form, which is incredibly powerful.
Maybe should we smell that one next?
Yeah, we can smell them side by side too.
Because this is one. Yeah, when I was. I'm just going to check what I wrote I wrote some notes as I was smelling this one. Honey, flowers, cheesy, socks. Wow. B.O., pretty harsh, pretty horrendous after a while.
That was just your shoe.
But it really started off as honey, like flowers and sweetness and grace. And then this went to basically, of all the things we're trying here today, it became the kind of the funkiest. But
I hadn't even heard of this.
So it's very interesting. We have the beeswax absolute in one hand here.
Yeah.
And then we have the isolated musk here in the other, which is phenylacetic acid. If you guys hold and smell them next to each other, you will find that actually there is a tremendous amount of phenylacetic acid in this
Yeah.
beeswax. They're very similar, but it's actually the waxy part and all the other molecules that make the beeswax absolute a lot rounder and softer. It really softens it out. So what's the difference between the two? The phenylacetic acid is collected by the bees. They ingest it as they're collecting the pollen from the plants. So phenylacetic acid, this is found in flowers. The bees wax. So where does the wax actually come from when the bees are making the hive? It doesn't come from the flowers, it comes from the bees themselves. So if you look at a bee, they're kind of like, they have shells, right? The bees have shells and they have compartment. You know, that's how they move their stinger around, right? They're like little tanks. They have little compartments. Between the compartments, between their joints on their exoskeleton, bees excrete the wax. So the wax comes from inside of the body of the bee. It's excreted out.
Yeah.
And that wax is combined together with the pollen and other things, which the pollen includes the phenylacetic acid. So that's how you get beeswax absolute.
Amazing. I had no idea.
Basically.
But it's so interesting because now looking back at my notes and saying when I first tried the phenylacetic acid, I thought, oh yeah, there's this sweetness, this kind of sugary floral kind of quality. But then almost of all the things here, it's the one which went the most dirty, funky. And as I was saying I think I said both you at the start that it was the quality of like some fluff that you found that's been between your toes for a few days or something. it was really
like
I'm getting a real like almond paste marzipan thing going on as well. Really almondy, like almost like a gangrenous wound.
Well, it's
sort of
definitely
worryingly sweet.
Yeah, it's beyond sweet. It's gone so sweet that it's like bitter. Like if you take those fake sugar packets and you put it on your tongue and all you can taste is like bitterness. I think something like that. It's a thin, overly sweet honey. And I think the flower that smells most like phenylacetic acid must be the honeysuckle flower.
So have you used phenylacetic acid in any of your fragrances?
What would this do in a perfume?
We both asked the same question.
I use phenylacetic acid in combination with butter CO2, essential oil made from butter, in my deer musk perfume, in my honey deer musk perfume. So for me, phenylacetic acid is kind of like this bridge between honey, fuzzy suede deer musk, and honey. Because it's this bitter honey, woody, bitter, overly sweet, thin honey. And then of course, if I were making a honeysuckle note, you can use it in rose accords as well, phenylacetic acid.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I hadn't heard of this at all, but it's been really, really interesting, especially one to wear. Like I found it it developed on skin it took me on such a big journey. Amazing. Right, so should we go from something
I love
which is definitely not flowery. It's Castoreum.
Yeah.
So this is one of the Animalics. I remember the first time I tried Yataghan, I can't remember where it was.
Oh,
but and it's probably synthetic Castoreum now, but just to get that kind of amazing leathery, woody kind of and it kind of seems to go well with, you know, birch, and it kind of intensely kind of manly, like rugged, like lumberjacky.
It's very,
Yeah.
It's really sexy, boozy, boozy, boozy as well.
oh
Really
yeah,
like,
very dark
Woodier than I would
here,
have thought.
yeah,
leather,
yeah,
incredibly masculine. I mean, if you had to
yeah.
choose one material to express masculinity, this could definitely be one of the top 3 choices, maybe.
But it's so boozy. I just get this really like the richest possible chocolate liqueur, like so like dark, and also kind of toffee and nuts as
I get
well.
quite a green thing as well.
I can see
It's
that.
quite green to me.
Mm. I definitely feel like in the forest, like wearing leather,
Yeah,
chopping down trees. Like,
it's I get a very, very soft, like very soft leather, very smooth leather, high quality leather couch that's just been worn in, and it's so soft and so comfortable.
it's very different, isn't it?
To
To
me,
like
this is very smooth.
we were talking earlier about this kind of freshly tanned leather, which feels like it's dried out in the sun. This doesn't feel that. It feels, you know, it's aged and it's yeah.
It's got a lot
So,
of oil in it.
can we just again briefly touch on the ethical question?
So for me, there's no ethical question to this one. It is a byproduct of beavers that have already been culled. So why is it not ethical for me? I grew up on a farm in a very small town in Canada. To go to Toronto, for example, I was also in Ontario, you have to drive 45 minutes to the closest train station and take a train for 5 hours to go to Toronto, right? Canada has a lot of these small towns, and in the north, there are a lot of French and Indigenous peoples, and Englishmen, whatever, all sorts of different peoples, living in small communities, living a very peaceful lifestyle, living in a very old way. So they've been catching fur and using all parts of the beaver for hundreds and hundreds of years. Very self-sufficient people. And I don't think it's my right, because I live in the city now, to tell them how to live. Because I might feel like I'm living a more ethical lifestyle than them. But look at the roads, and everything's paved over here, and there's no forests. And it's not like these guys are going into the forest killing thousands and thousands of beavers. That's not the case at all. So they do make use of it. They're very resourceful people. And by I get these, this Castoreum from these trappers who would otherwise just throw it away. Or they would sell the Castoreum to high quality vanilla ice cream producers, because it is a material used in the highest quality vanilla ice creams.
I can imagine that. They kind
It's
of
got this
Wow,
rich,
I need to
creamy,
try some of that.
yeah, it's very rich, it's creamy, it's oily, it's fatty.
yeah.
It's very naturalistic, it's very round,
So beautiful.
smoky. And
It's
how do you
really
get the
nice, isn't it?
Castoreum? So, you know, these lumberjack folks, these Indigenous Canadian peoples, these people that are living their way of life, right? Like a lot of these guys don't even have electricity in their house, honest to God. They go out in their canoe and they trap, and they eat a lot of the meat, or they sell it, or they sell the fur to survive. None of them are millionaires. And they basically, after they're done skinning the animal, they take the Castoreum, basically the beaver balls, and they hammer them above their fireplace. This is not produced mass production. You know, a trapper might have 3 or 4 in one season. They put them above their fireplace. So it's a musk pod that's been smoked by their fireplace in their log cabin.
Amazing.
And then they go on Etsy, or they go online and they say, hey, do you want these? I'm going to throw them away anyways. Maybe I can make an extra few bucks. So
yeah.
I
Well,
mean, you know,
It's the most complete of all
I'm
of
not a
these, I think.
vegetarian. I'm not an idealist.
Yeah.
I wish the world were different, but I don't think these indigenous peoples are doing much harm, living their way of living. So that's my point
No,
of view.
I would agree. And I have to say,
Yeah.
I know these are what we are smelling are individual materials which are going to become, potentially a small part of a fragrance. But on their own, for me, this is probably the most beautiful. I did love the deer
Yeah.
musk, but this it's so beautiful, and I just get this, boozy, chocolatey, nutty, outdoorsy as well. I feel, beautiful.
The most beautiful
Yeah, I would
Castoreum
gladly wear
perfume
that
I have
on its
smelled,
own.
Hmm.
yeah, is not Egoist. What's that one Chanel? It starts with an E. It's a leather
Antaeus,
perfume.
Antaeus.
I smelled vintage 1980s Antaeus, and it has a significant amount of real castor, and it's absolutely beautiful. I don't know if you smelt the original, but it's
No, my
man,
bottle's not.
No.
it's you gotta find it. It's unbelievable. It's the most beautiful leather perfume I've ever smelled.
Magical, magical. So where do we
So
go
good.
next? How about Indole? Something a bit different.
Indole,
So this is something
dead
we
What
bodies.
is
often.
indole? I've never understood this.
Well, indole is a molecule. So this is an isolated molecule. It's found in nature. It's found in rotting fruit, rotting vegetables, and rotting animal corpses. So it is the smell. If you've heard the expression, the sweet smell of death, that is the smell of indole. And when people say the sweet smell of death, they're being quite literal. A dead body actually smells sweet and sugary. A couple hours or days, I don't know, into the process. And this is that material that, you know, the difference between a green banana and a very overripe black banana, it's the indole. So it gives this deep complexity to it. It's sweet, it's punchy.
But it does remind me of lilies as well, and I don't know if it's because lilies is something I think of as funereal, but occasionally you smell, you smell white florals when we describe them as indolic, and it's just this slightly. It's very austere as well. It's not an inviting musk. So many of these musks are cuddly. I do feel there's a coldness to it.
Yeah. Jasmine has a tremendous amount of indole. Tremendous amount of indole. In fact, I invite you, if you have jasmine plants anywhere in your area, bring this with you, put it on a thing, smell it, and smell jasmine. And there's very little difference. Jasmine is a lot of indole. Mothballs.
It smells to me the most vintage of all of these, actually.
I know what you mean.
I get a real vintage vibe from this indole.
It makes you think
Kind
of
of
You're
those
right,
big.
Joe. I mean, a lot of.
Sorry.
Yeah. These big old French jasmine perfumes. Indole, jasmine, and then on the top you got the sparkling aldehydes.
Yeah.
That's the vintage stuff.
It's kind of incredible, isn't it? Because for me, on one hand, it does conjure up, some of the things we've been talking about in terms of, this not quite rotting, but this smell of lilies. But it because it for me captures that old French world. There's something kind of glamorous about it as well. I'm automatically thinking of big fur coats and big hairdos and pearl necklaces. Just because of that association with these big old French fragrances.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. We're heading into a very, I feel, overly cautious, a very conservative culture. I'm only 42, so obviously I can't remember the 70s, but every once in a while I'll go on the internet and man, the stuff they said, you can't say that today, and just the jokes and sort of easygoingness of that time. It's really, I mean, and same thing with the IFRA and overly cautious perfumes. A lot of young people are being, you know, they say that generation, what is it, Y or whatever, they're very overly
Whatever it is now.
cautious.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
But
these perfumes were not like that.
and it's you know, especially, you know, UK is just about to go into lockdown again, especially in these times when we can't travel and you know, you can't go to exciting, glamorous places. To smell things like this automatically transports you, you know, to a happier time, a time when you could, you know, a carefree time of glamour and travel, and I guess that's the thing with perfume generally. Whilst I
Yeah,
can't afford a wardrobe of you know, bespoke designer suits, I can have a few little 30 ml, 50 ml bottles of real luxury, which makes me feel like the richest person in the world.
That's, you know,
absolutely.
I don't, you guys already know about my brand, and up till now I might go into, well, I'll talk about that later, but maybe perhaps selling online through a store. But up till now, I've been selling everything directly to people to keep the prices as low as I can. And I'm always uploading stuff on Instagram. So people who buy from me, they know that I'm doing everything with my hands. And they know that I'm using some, you know, a touch here and there of beautiful, glamorous materials. And I really hope that when they do purchase it, that they get a little bit of this humanity and the mammals, you know, that we have here in and amongst the musks.
Mm.
It's an expression of life, and also if something's a little stinky, and it's an expression of real life, like you know, like farts or sex or bad breath or,
Mhm.
but you know, I have a theory, like I think people are attracted to musks because in the end, it is something very positive when it comes to sort of survival. So if you think about it, for the vast majority of human evolution, we've been living maybe 100,000 years or more, well, depending on whatever you believe, but sitting around the campfire. And around the campfire, you had other stinky human beings. You had, you know, fur coats on. You would probably have some animals in some stalls around you. And we've been living this sort of um, very close to the bonfire, close to other humans, everybody stinky, living with animals for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And these musks are reflect these kinds of relationships. Now, when you're in the forest and you're out in the middle of nowhere, in a very sterile environment, or you're in the plains, and you can't smell any animals and you can't smell any other human beings, you are in a very precarious, potentially dangerous situation.
Mm.
You're not around anybody or any of the village's walls that can provide protection for you. And when you start waking your way back, when you're done your hunt or whatever, even the hunt, even capturing that animal is a success. So when you capture that animal and you got the stink and you've been introduced to the stink, you've done something that will sustain yourself, and then you go back to the village and you smell other animals, smell other people, you smell the fire, you smell the leather materials. You're
Yeah.
returning to something safe. So it's no wonder that people enjoy these materials, especially during a lockdown,
Yeah.
or especially in isolated circumstances like that. So this is one
Absolutely.
theory of mine as to why people gravitate towards them. You know, I think it's something very deep, and it's kind of like this shared experience
Yeah.
that people of every
Yeah.
nation, every race, every culture, every, you know, been living with musks for tens of thousands of years. So,
Absolutely. Can we just pause for 1 second?
Well,
I've
that's
just
so
got to.
interesting.
doubt, you know, yeah,
Yeah.
millions of
Should we?
years.
What should we go for next? Could we try this? This I never know how to say it. Is it Musk Ketone? Musk Ketone.
Musk Ketone, yeah,
So this is a
nitro musk.
nitro. Exactly. So nitro musk is. It's a term that I remember when I started reading about perfumery and reading literature and reviews and things. It was bemoaning the fact that lots of these great fragrances no longer had Nitro musk. So what is a nitro musk?
A nitro musk, funny story, this was actually discovered by a German, I think a Dr. Bauer, a chemist, and he was trying to make TNT. He couldn't make TNT, but he made Musk Ketone. So it smells a little bit soapy. It smells like your typical clean clothing.
Yeah.
It smells like powdery and powdery floral, slightly ionic, like beta ionone.
Yeah.
And so we've been doing these animal musks. So I suppose a lot of people might ask, like, why is this also considered a musk? So okay. So what's familiar between this and deer musk is one thing, or a couple things. Its tenacity, it will last for days, and it brings lift and diffusion to the other elements in a perfume. That's essentially what musks do. Musks typically provide, if you put in tiny little bits, tiny little amounts into a perfume, it provides a kind of rocket fuel where it makes everything else project. It makes everything in a perfume combine very well. It's a blender. Yep. It exalts the perfume, similar to animal musks.
I mean, this has less of an obvious, to me, less of an obvious fragrance profile if we compare it to the Castoreum, for instance, or the Hyraceum. I find it much easier to, pick out notes that we associate in perfume. This, I get a kind of laundry detergent. And also, as you said, this kind of like almost not, I don't know if metallic's the right word, but slightly like ozonic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you were to make took a bunch of essential oils and you put them together and you smell them and you're like, it doesn't smell like a perfume. But then you added something like Musk Ketone to it, that adds the cosmetic element. It adds the waxy, the powderiness. If your mom had a perfume, used to store her perfumes in her wallet and she just emptied it out and you smelt the inside, that cosmeticness, that perfumeness is what modern materials bring to the essential oils and to the natural materials. So it really gives the perfuminess to it. Yeah. It's the best way I can describe.
But it's a very familiar smell.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, because I think you recognise it like kind of a laundry detergent-y kind of. But Musk Ketone, is that something which is now, is it banned by IFRA or is it banned?
It's not banned. You can use up to, I think, 1.5%. And it's not bad for humans, and it's not bad for most animals. But what it is bad for, this used to be in everything in the world. Like from the 1910s to the 1970s, it was in like lipstick, makeup, shampoo, body lotion, every kind of cosmetic. And between like 1910 and the 1970s, billions and billions and billions of tons of this stuff washed into the ocean. And scientists found out that tiny, tiny little animals don't like it. It affects them badly. It affects their nervous system. Now, does that mean that it would affect our nervous system badly? No, because not all animals are the same, but it is essential if you want to make genuine old style perfumes. And the nice thing about this is I can make a very bright perfume that's citrusy in the opening, and then this doesn't affect the opening at all, but the dry down is nice and fluffy. So this is in the Civet Cat Chypre. As I told you, the Civet Cat Chypre, you can smell the civet right away in combination with a juicy bergamot.
Yeah.
But when it dries down, what's left is a powdery, sweet vanilla, Musk Ketone, and civet.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a powdery body scent, if you will.
Yeah.
So every musk has a different character. You know, some affect the top notes, some don't, some, you know.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
Should we move on to a couple of things which I hadn't heard of before? Helvetolide?
Helvetolide. Yeah.
So
this is a modern musk.
Yeah. I've written, quite sweet and fruity.
Berry.
Yeah. I mean, on its own, I mean, I understand, of course, these are things which are, you know, they're some of them are going to become very small parts of a fragrance, but this is something which on its own, I don't like the smell of it on its own.
Okay. This is in a lot of fruity floral perfumes, modern day, teenage young women. Yeah.
Yeah.
That to me is the smell of the Kiehl's musk.
I haven't smelled Kiehl's musk for the longest time.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Actually, maybe what I found unattractive about it is the kind of over familiarity, or the, you know, it's something I don't necessarily recognize the smell on its own, but it reminds me of fragrances that maybe I don't like. I mean, Kiehl's I quite enjoy, but yeah, I think now you've said Kiehl's, I'm really feeling
kind of inky as well somehow.
Wait, Kiehl's. I think Kiehl's is the Tonquitone.
Oh, right, okay, that's the next one. You haven't opened the Tonquitone by mistake, have you?
No. That was the thingy.
The Tonquitone, that's a synthetic deer musk, very honey-like.
Yeah.
I like this. I get a very familiar sense that I can't put my finger on, but it's something that makes me feel quite comfortable, cozy.
Well, Joe, it's in nearly everything. Helvetolide. Yep. Helvetolide, Galaxolide, Habanolide, Hedione, did I say that already? A lot of these white musks are in modern perfumes, and some of modern perfumes are like 80-90% white musks.
Yeah.
And they're pleasant, and they're really good at combining things together, really mashing out all the hard angles and making a perfume, and taking the stronger materials and the essential oils and the florals and making them more transparent. So a lot of today's perfumes are far more transparent, much less animalic than the 70s or the pre-IFRA perfumes.
It's like cooking, isn't it? I think there's a move away now from big creamy dishes and lots of butter, and even sort of Gordon Ramsay in sort of recent years has become a lot fresher and lighter and cleaner with the flavors.
Yeah. Yeah.
So should we move on to?
It's quite. It's not that I. Yeah. I do enjoy a lot of modern perfume. I really do.
Tonquitone.
Tonquitone.
What did I say about this? I said sweet honey, warm, fuzzy, quite stinky.
Yeah.
Let me remind myself. Yeah, this was a bit funkier than the Helvetolide, I thought.
Oh yeah.
Quite a lot funkier. And actually, this is one that I had on my wrist today. And there was quite a persistent funk, actually. I quite enjoyed this, and I'm sure I've smelled. This definitely feels familiar in a few more. I'm sure I've smelled this in a few more kind of indie fragrances. To get this in, I'm sure that there's a fragrance. I can't remember who's it by, but there's a kind of it's a burnt popcorn, seasidey, sexy kind of smell. I had this, and I'm getting that kind of like burnt toffee apple, like kind of like candied, burnt candy kind of thing.
Well, this is essentially that Vietnamese deer musk. This is kind of what it smells like with this sort of intensity. Of course, the natural is much more complex and darker. Not that I've smelt it because it's impossible to. I wouldn't want to get it anyways. The animal's in danger. So, but Tonquitone, it's very. The way I look at it, it's midway between urine and honey.
Yeah, I do. So this is
Immortelle as well.
Yeah, maybe that's that curry. Yeah, curried.
Yeah,
I really like this. I find it like chalk and cheese with the last one. I mean, I find it completely different to the last one. That last one was, it felt more kind of like airy, kind of almost ozonic in a kind of sweet. This just feels. This feels it has much more relation to some of those natural animalic musks we smelt. You know, civet and the deer musk. I like this.
Oh, it's really good, isn't it?
it's very round.
It's like just so round and balanced.
Yeah.
It's pleasant. It's sweet. It's definitely very sweet, and it's an accord. So it's a synthetic musk Tonkin reproduction. Tonquitone. I think you might find it in Musk Kublai Khan, something like this.
Yeah.
I think you might find it in Kronos. What is that one?
Koros.
Gross. I think you might find it something like that in it. But if you compare this one with the deer musk, real one that I give you, then you'll have a pretty firm idea of what deer musk smells like.
Yeah.
It's got this warm, slightly urinous, slightly suede-like leather, honey. That's your quintessential deer musk profile.
Yeah. Okay, so we've only got one left.
One more.
And it's the one which seems to be the most, it's everywhere. It seems to be the kind of most kind of staple of modern perfumery. Well, that's certainly the kind of impression I get. ISO Super.
Yeah.
Oh,
then
yeah.
what actually is ISO Super all about?
It's beautiful. It's a warm cedar wood, warmth, very clean, healthy young person sitting in the sunshine, suntanned skin, blending soft, round material.
I think I remember when we smelt materials with Sarah McCartney, she categorized it as sexy woods. She just calls it sexy woods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It's simultaneously, it's semi-transparent, so it's not strong, so it blends everything else in the perfume together. It's definitely very warm. Yeah. It's got nuances of steamed cedar. So I used to live in Japan for, nearly a decade, and they have these onsen, these cedar mineral baths.
Yeah, I went to
and the steamed cedar wood and mineral water. That's what ISO Super smells like. It's one of my favorite materials, and it's for date night. You can just put some on, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that I find it easy to kind of look down on it because it's a kind of thing which seems to be so absolutely everywhere. But I've got some ISO Super, and sometimes have put it on other things just to You know, especially if there are some all natural perfumes that I've used which are really, really beautiful, but just don't seem to last at all. So I've just put a bit of ISO-EC on first and then sprayed the natural fragrance, and then
That's a good idea.
yeah.
It'll make them more diffusive as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is ISOE Super, is it used in the wrong way in certain perfumes? Is it abused? What is it about ISOE Super that,
So you know what I think it is?
people often do look down on it, don't they?
What I think it is, and I hope I don't come off as arrogant, but what I think it is a lot of folks, they hear the word ISOE Super or Hedione, or maybe Galaxolide. So it's one of the common things people hear, oh, if I'm not a chemist or if I'm not a perfumer, certainly I've heard of ISOE Super. And then there are some people who don't like synthetics. So if they spray on a perfume and they get a headache from it, one of the few materials that sort of comes to mind might be ISOE Super. And they might make the connection, okay, gosh, this has so much ISOE Super, I don't like it.
Yeah.
When in fact, I've actually sent vials to people. They said they didn't like ISOE Super, and they told me the profile, oh, I don't like this bitter sort of sharp thing. And they're like, it's got to be ISOE Super. It smells terrible. And I'm like, no, it's buttery, soft, and warm. It's beautiful. And I send it to them, and they're like, yeah, this is not, So I think it's one of those things that are just on the edge of understanding, and very often we attack, sort of human nature is that we attack things we don't quite have a grasp on. I think that's what it is.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's yeah, absolutely. And I think it's there are a lot of a huge number of people, not only perfume, that if anything is synthetic, synthetic equals bad. I just, the number of, we get comments on our video saying, can you suggest a perfume which doesn't have any chemicals in it? Like, a rose is a chemical. Do you know what I mean? Like, a flower is a chemical. Like, they're all chemicals.
Water is a chemical. Water is a chemical.
And people who think automatically that...
Yeah, you are made of only chemicals. The only thing in the world, in the universe that exists is chemicals. So we should make it very clear for people what chemicals are. It's looking at the universe at a certain magnification.
Yeah.
So, we're walking around seeing people at this sort of viewpoint from our particular perspective, particular size. But if we were molecules, the size of molecules, then we would see the universe as only being made of chemicals.
Yeah.
And then if you go down even a further level, then you would see the universe as being made up of only atoms, which is much smaller. But chemistry is the study of the universe at a certain size. There is not a single thing in this universe that exists that is not a chemical. There's not a single thing in the entire universe that is not a chemical.
And I think you're right. I think, when there are perfumes that smell bad and cheap because they're made of bad and cheap things. And I think, that it's easy that when it smells bad and cheap, we think, oh, I know the name of one synthetic perfume material, so it must be that one synthetic perfume material which is causing all that's wrong in perfumery.
And Broxton has had the same thing, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think Sauvage from Dior. I've been one of the people that have said, "Oh yeah, it's full of ambroxan. It's just cheap shit." And actually, I didn't know anything about ambroxan at all. I had no real idea, but I was repeating what I'd read and heard, and I thought, actually, what does it really smell of? Is it just is it used badly by some people and used really well by other people? Who knows?
So that's the end of it. That's our 11 materials which you've kindly sent us.
Fantastic. Thank you.
It was fun.
It's been really fun, and it's whenever we do these kind of things, I kind of finish it thinking, oh my God, there's so much I still don't know, and there's so much to learn, and I feel we're just opening up a can of worms to a whole world. And I'm sure even within these examples you've given us, there's much further to go. And as you said with the ambergris, there's different types of ambergris, and yeah, a whole world of stinky things.
Can I ask a silly question here?
No such thing. I'm a silly guy.
If I pour all of these things into a vat or a vial now, have I just made the best perfume in the world ever? That's my one.
Probably,
I'm looking at this stuff and thinking, oh my God.
Yeah.
Probably not. I mean, it's like if you mix all your favorite colors together, you're like, oh, I like red and purple and orange, and I like green, and you mix it together, you're gonna get mush. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's the skill of someone like you, really, isn't it? That you know how to use these things. And
can I do a little
what doesn't work?
self promo? Not really self promo, but I love explaining stuff to you guys, and I do the same thing online. So if anybody wants to study with me, just contact with me. And I'm doing the same thing, like these Zoom meetups for teaching people. I'm just starting to get into that. Probably do it in January when things slow down.
Awesome.
But yeah, I love the infiniteness, like the. If I studied as best as I could all day, every day, all day long, I will never even touch the surface of everything involved in perfumery. There's so much history, religion, ceremonies, molecules, chemistry, science, art. It's an amazing thing to discover, and I love to share this with you guys.
Yeah,
absolutely love it.
Oh, well, thank you.
Well, it's been really good fun. It's been a real opener. And as I said, I just left thinking like I know nothing, and I'm just going to find more. But yeah, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks so much, Matt.
Yeah, lots of fun. So you guys enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
We will do.
And we look forward to smelling more of your things in future and seeing what you come up with. And it's such an insight to see the sort of things that you work with on a day-to-day basis. Yeah.
My wife has given me orders. I have to make more girl perfumes, she said. So we got to do that. And I'm going to be doing some freshies for the springtime, because I do love making the freshies, but I haven't really let anything out yet. But you can count on me. I'll always make weird perfumes, no doubt about it.
Good.
You know,
Cool.
Prin Lomros is one of my heroes, and I love his, try something, put it out there. If people like it, they buy it. If they don't like it, it's okay. I love that, like the art. So always put out stuff like that.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Cool. Well, this is definitely going to be one of our longest ever videos. So we better wrap up. But again, thank you so much. Okay. And thank you for everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Until next time.
Guys, see ya. Awesome Sunday.
Great to see you.
Bye-bye.
Till next time. Ciao. Happy sniffing.